Stop humming that song. The words cut through the quiet hum of the restaurant kitchen like a blade. Olivia's hands froze over the dough she'd been kneading, flour dusting her fingertips like snow. She turned slowly, her heart already beginning to hammer against her ribs. The man standing in the doorway wasn't supposed to be there. The kitchen was her sanctuary, the one place in Rossi's where she could work in peace, away from the dining room's chaos and the watchful eyes of management. But here he was, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on a movie screen. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, and his eyes, storm gray and intense, were fixed on her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry?" Olivia managed, her voice smaller than she intended. "That song." He stepped into the kitchen, and she noticed the way the other staff members seemed to melt into the background, suddenly very interested in their prep work. "Where did you learn it?" Her mouth went dry. She'd been humming without thinking, just a melody that had been stuck in her head since childhood, something wordless and haunting that her grandmother used to sing when Olivia couldn't sleep. It's just something my nonna used to." "Your grandmother." He moved closer, and Olivia caught the scent of expensive cologne mixed with something darker, more dangerous. There were tattoos peeking out from under his collar, intricate designs that disappeared beneath the crisp white of his shirt. What was her name? "I don't understand. Who are you?" "Answer the question." His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was steel underneath. This was a man used to being obeyed. Olivia's back pressed against the stainless steel counter. Her heart was racing now, confusion mixing with genuine fear. Maria Castellano, but she's been gone for 15 years. I don't see what... The man's expression shifted. Just for a moment, his carefully controlled mask slipped, and she saw something raw and painful flash across his features. He reached up, loosening his tie with one hand, and she noticed the tremor in his fingers. "Get out," he said, but he wasn't talking to her. He was addressing the kitchen staff who scrambled to obey, abandoning their stations and filing out through the back door. Within seconds, Olivia was alone with this stranger, and the silence felt suffocating. "Please," she whispered. "I don't know what I did wrong. I need this job. I can't afford to—" "Sit down." It wasn't a request. Olivia sank into one of the metal folding chairs they kept in the corner, her legs suddenly unwilling to hold her weight. The man pulled out another chair and sat facing her, his elbows resting on his knees, his hands clasped together. Up close, she could see the tattoos more clearly. Roses and thorns winding up his forearms, disappearing under his rolled sleeves. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, and another along his jawline. "My name is Marco Vittori," he said, and Olivia's stomach dropped. Everyone in the neighborhood knew that name. The Vittoris owned half of South Philadelphia, and what they didn't own, they controlled. Rossi's, the restaurant where she'd been working for the past 6 months, was one of their properties. "And that song you were humming, it's not just a lullaby. It's a very specific song that my mother used to sing. A song that was written by her mother, passed down through exactly one family line. Mine." Olivia shook her head, confusion clouding her thoughts. "That's not possible. My grandmother taught it to me when I was 5 years old. She said it was something her mother taught her, and her mother before that. Then we have a problem." Marco leaned back, studying her face with an intensity that made her want to look away, but she forced herself to hold his gaze, even as her hands trembled in her lap. "Because that song doesn't leave the Vittori family. Ever. Which means either your grandmother stole it or..." He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "Or what?" "Or she was family." The words hung in the air between them, impossible and yet somehow ringing with truth. Olivia thought of her grandmother, the sharp-tongued woman who'd raised her after Olivia's mother died, who'd never talked about the past, who'd taken so many secrets to her grave. Maria Castellano, who'd lived in a tiny apartment in South Philly her whole life, who'd worked as a seamstress and spoken Italian when she was angry or emotional. She never mentioned. She wouldn't have. Marco stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the alley. If she left the family, if she ran away, Castellano. That was her married name? Olivia nodded, finding her voice. She married my grandfather when she was 18. He died before I was born. And your mother? Dead. I was 12. The old wound still ached, even after 16 years. It's just been me since Nonna passed. Marco turned back to face her, and there was something different in his expression now. Still intense, still dangerous, but with an edge of something she couldn't identify. Maria Vittori disappeared in 1967. She was 17 years old, engaged to be married to a man chosen by her father. The family searched for her for years, but she vanished completely. My father, her younger brother, never stopped looking. The kitchen felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in. Olivia's mind was reeling, trying to process what he was telling her. You're saying my grandmother ran away from the mob. I'm saying she ran away from her family, from her obligations, from everything she was supposed to be. There was no judgment in his voice, just statement of fact. And if you're her granddaughter, if you're Maria's blood, then that makes you... What? What does that make me? Marco moved closer again, and this time Olivia didn't shrink back. She was tired of being afraid, tired of feeling small. She'd survived her mother's death, her grandmother's death, years of barely scraping by, working 3 jobs to keep herself housed and fed. She'd be damned if she'd let some mobster, family or not, intimidate her in her own kitchen. It makes you one of us, he said softly, whether you want to be or not. I don't want to be, I mean. She stood up, meeting his eyes. I'm not interested in your family or your business. I just want to work my shifts, pay my rent, and live my life. Whatever my grandmother ran from, she obviously had good reason. For the first time, something like a smile tugged at the corner of Marco's mouth. You have her fire. My father used to tell stories about her. How she'd stand up to my grandfather, how she'd argue with the men twice her age and twice her size. She was fierce. She was kind. Olivia's voice cracked slightly. She was the kindest person I ever knew. She taught me to bake, to sew, to stand up for myself. She never talked about violence or crime or... She protected you. Marco's expression softened. She built a different life, away from all of this. I understand that. I respect it. Then let me go back to work. Forget you heard me humming. We can both pretend this conversation never happened. I wish I could. He reached into his jacket, and Olivia's breath caught, but he only pulled out a phone. But there are people who need to know about this. My father, for one. He's dying, Olivia. Cancer. He has maybe 3 months left, and he's spent his entire life wondering what happened to his sister. Don't you think he deserves to know she was safe? That she was happy? The guilt hit her like a physical blow. Olivia closed her eyes, thinking of her grandmother's laugh, her warm hugs, the way she'd hum that lullaby while braiding Olivia's hair. If there was family out there, real blood family, who'd been searching for Maria all these years, who'd been living with that uncertainty. 1 meeting, she heard herself say. I'll meet your father. Once, and then I'm done. Marco's shoulders relaxed slightly, and she realized he'd been tense, prepared for her to refuse. Tomorrow, I'll send a car. I can take the bus. A car, he repeated, and there was that steel again. This isn't a negotiation, Olivia. The moment word gets out that Maria Vittori's granddaughter has been found, there will be people interested in that information. Not all of them friendly. Fear spiked through her chest. What do you mean? I mean that our family has enemies. I mean that blood ties carry weight in this world, whether you acknowledge them or not. I mean that as of this moment, you're under my protection, and you'll accept it, because the alternative is... He stopped, his jaw clenching. There is no alternative. You can't just... I can. I am. He moved to the door, then paused. 9 a.m. tomorrow. The car will be outside your apartment. Wear something nice. And Olivia? He looked back at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Don't run. It wouldn't end well. Then he was gone, leaving her alone in the kitchen with her racing heart and the smell of flour and fear. Olivia didn't sleep that night. She lay in her tiny studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, trying to make sense of everything. Her phone sat on the nightstand, Marco's number programmed into it before he'd left. "In case you need anything," he'd said, though they both knew it was also so he could track her. She thought about running. She had maybe $300 in her savings account, enough for a bus ticket to somewhere far away. But where would she go? And what kind of life would she have? Always looking over her shoulder, always wondering if they'd found her. More than that, there was a part of her, a part she didn't want to examine too closely, that was curious. Her grandmother had always been such a mystery, deflecting questions about her past, about the family she came from. Olivia had grown up feeling rootless, like a plant with shallow soil. The idea that there might be answers out there, that there might be people who shared her blood, her history. At 8:55 a.m., she was standing on the curb outside her building, wearing the only nice dress she owned, a navy blue sheath she'd bought secondhand for job interviews. The black town car that pulled up was so clean it gleamed, and when the driver, a man with silver hair and kind eyes, opened the door for her, she felt like she was stepping into another world. Marco was waiting in the back seat, and Olivia's breath caught despite herself. In the daylight, he was even more striking. The sharp planes of his face, the intensity of his gaze, the way he seemed to fill the entire space just by existing. He wore another expensive suit, this one dark navy, and his hair was still damp, like he'd just showered. "You came," he said, and she heard the relief in his voice. "I keep my word." She slid into the seat, careful to keep distance between them. "Does your father know? That you found me?" "Not yet. I wanted to be sure first." He nodded to the driver, and the car pulled smoothly into traffic. "I spent the night making calls, checking records. Your grandmother married Anthony Castellano in December of 1967. He was a good man, no family connections, worked as a mechanic. They had your mother in 1969. The timeline fits." "You investigated my whole family history in one night?" A slight smile. "I have resources." They drove through the city, but instead of heading to what Olivia assumed would be some mansion or compound, they pulled up to a modest brick house in a quiet neighborhood. It was well maintained, but not ostentatious, with flower boxes in the windows and a neat front lawn. "He doesn't live in a fortress? A mansion?" Marco's expression was wry. "That's my house. My father retired 15 years ago, stepped back from the business. He wanted something quieter." He led her up the front walk, and Olivia noticed the way his hand hovered near the small of her back, not quite touching, but protective. Possessive, even. The front door opened before they reached it, and a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and a warm smile ushered them inside. "He's in the sunroom," she said to Marco, then turned to Olivia. "You must be Maria's granddaughter. I'm Rosa. I take care of Mr. Vittori. You have her eyes." Olivia followed Marco through the house, her heart pounding harder with every step. The interior was cozy, filled with photographs and comfortable furniture. It smelled like coffee and something baking, so different from what she'd expected. The sunroom was bright and warm, filled with plants. An old man sat in a wheelchair by the window, a blanket over his lap despite the warmth. He looked thin, frail, but when he turned to face them, Olivia saw her grandmother's nose, her grandmother's sharp chin. The resemblance was unmistakable. "Papa," Marco said softly, "this is Olivia." The old man's eyes filled with tears. His hands, spotted with age and illness, trembled on the arms of his wheelchair. "Maria's girl," he whispered. "Santo cielo, you look just like her. Just like my sister." Olivia felt her own eyes burning. She moved forward slowly, then knelt beside the wheelchair. "Mr. Vittori, Call me Leo." "Please." His hand reached out, and she took it, feeling the fragile bones beneath papery skin. "Tell me about her. Tell me everything. Was she happy? Did she have a good life?" So Olivia told him. She talked about her grandmother's laugh, her terrible jokes, the way she'd sing while she cooked, She described the tiny apartment filled with light, the garden Maria had maintained on the fire escape, the way she'd taught Olivia to be strong, but kind. She talked about the lullaby, about the traditions Maria had passed down without ever explaining their origin. Leo cried openly, not bothering to hide his tears. "She got out," he whispered. "She got away from all the darkness, all the violence. She made a real life." "Why did she leave?" Olivia asked softly. "Marco said she was engaged. To a monster." Leo's voice hardened. "Our father arranged it, a marriage to unite two families. But the man, he was cruel, violent. Maria tried to tell our father, but he wouldn't listen. So she ran, and I helped her." Marco, who'd been standing silently by the door, stiffened. "You what?" "I gave her money, a new identity, a way out. I was only 15, but I loved my sister more than I feared my father. I watched her drive away, and I never told anyone. Let them think she was kidnapped, let them search. But I knew she was free, and that was enough." Leo looked up at his son. "I never told you because I didn't want you to carry that secret, to have to lie to the family. Papa, I would do it again." Leo's voice was firm despite his weakness. "Family isn't just blood, Marco. It's also knowing when to let someone go. Maria chose her path, and it was the right one. Look at her granddaughter. Bright, strong, alive. If she'd stayed, if she'd married that man, none of this would exist." Marco's expression was complicated, anger and understanding and something else warring on his face. He moved to the window, his back rigid, his hands shoved in his pockets. "Did she ever—" Leo's voice cracked. "Did she ever talk about me? About missing us?" Olivia thought carefully. She never talked about her past, but sometimes she'd get this look in her eyes. Sad and distant. And she'd sing that lullaby, and I could hear the longing in it. I think she missed you every day, but I also think she never regretted her choice." "Good. Good." Leo patted her hand. "You'll stay for lunch? Rosa makes the best braciole." "I should get back to work. I have a shift at—" "I'll handle it," Marco said from the window, his voice still tight. "Stay with him, please." So she stayed. They had lunch in the sunroom, and Leo told stories about Maria as a girl, her mischief, her kindness, her fierce spirit. Rosa brought out photo albums, and Olivia saw pictures of her grandmother as a teenager, laughing and beautiful, and so alive it made her chest ache. Marco barely spoke, but she caught him watching her several times, his expression unreadable. When his phone rang, he stepped out to take the call, and Leo reached for Olivia's hand again. "My son," he said quietly. "He carries too much weight. Since he took over the family business 10 years ago, I've watched him turn harder, colder. But you remind him of something else. I can see it in how he looks at you. He barely knows me. He knows you're Maria's blood. He knows you're brave enough to walk into a world you don't understand because an old man asked you to. That's enough." Leo's eyes were shrewd despite his illness. "The men in our family, we don't love easily. But when we do, it's forever. It's everything. I don't want any part of that life, the violence, the crime. Neither did Maria. But she couldn't escape her blood, even when she ran. It followed her, shaped her, made her who she was." He squeezed her hand gently. "You can't run from yourself, child. You can only choose how you live with it." Marco returned, his expression darker. "We need to go." "What's wrong?" "Nothing you need to worry about. Business." But his hand was on her arm, pulling her gently but firmly toward the door. To Leo, he said, "I'll call you later, Papa." In the car, Marco's jaw was tight, his body radiating tension. Olivia noticed they weren't heading back toward her apartment. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe." "Marco, you're scaring me." He turned to face her, and his eyes were blazing. "The news got out. About you. About Maria's granddaughter being found. I don't know how, but word travels fast in this world, and there are people who would use you to get to me. to hurt my family. But I'm not part of your family. You are the moment my father claimed you. The moment you walked into his house, sat at his table, held his hand. Marco's voice was rough. You're under our protection now, whether you accept it or not. And that makes you a target. Terror clawed at her throat. This is insane. Yesterday I was just a line cook, and now you're telling me I need protection? That people want to hurt me? Yes. The single word was flat, final. Welcome to my world, Olivia. Welcome to the life your grandmother escaped, but that you've just walked straight into. They pulled up to a high-rise building downtown, and Marco practically carried her to the elevator, his hand firm on her back. They rode up to the penthouse in silence, and when the doors opened directly into a sprawling apartment, Olivia's mind went blank. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. The decor was modern and masculine, all clean lines and dark colors. There was art on the walls that she suspected cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. This is your place. This is where you'll stay, until we figure out the threat level, until we neutralize anyone who might have ideas about using you. Marco moved to a bar cart, pouring himself 2 fingers of whiskey. There are guards in the building. The security system is military grade. You'll be safe here. I have a job, an apartment, a life, which will all still be there when this is over. He downed the whiskey in one swallow. I'm sorry, Olivia. I know this isn't what you wanted, but I can't. I won't let anything happen to you. Why? She moved closer, anger replacing fear. Why do you even care? You didn't know I existed 24 hours ago. Marco set down his glass carefully, then turned to face her. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. Because you walked into that kitchen humming my mother's lullaby, and for the first time in years, I felt something besides emptiness. Because you sat with my dying father and gave him peace he's been searching for since before I was born. Because you have Maria's fire, and I'll be damned if I let the world snuff that out the way it tried to snuff her out. The air between them felt electric. Olivia's heart was racing, but not from fear anymore. She was acutely aware of how close he was, of the way his eyes dropped to her mouth before rising back to meet her gaze. Marco. His phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered it with a curt greeting, then his expression went cold. When? Where? A pause. I'll handle it. He hung up, then looked at her. Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone except me or my men. I'll be back as soon as I can. What's happening? Something I need to deal with. He moved to a cabinet, pulled out a gun, checked it with practiced efficiency. Olivia's stomach turned. Rosa will be here within the hour. She'll stay with you. I don't need a babysitter. No, you need a guard. Rosa has been with the family for 40 years, and she's saved more lives than you can imagine. Trust her. He moved to the door, then paused. The code for the alarm is 0417, April 17th, the day my mother was born. The day Maria ran away. Don't forget it. Then he was gone, and Olivia was alone in a penthouse that felt more like a prison, no matter how beautiful it was. Rosa arrived as promised, bringing bags of groceries and a warmth that immediately made the space feel less intimidating. She cooked while Olivia sat at the kitchen island, watching and trying to process everything that had happened in less than 2 days. You're handling this better than I expected, Rosa said as she stirred a pot of sauce. Most people would be hysterical by now. I think I'm in shock. That's fair, Rosa smiled. For what it's worth, Marco is one of the good ones. He didn't choose this life. It chose him when his father got sick and there was no one else to take over. But he's tried to steer the family in a better direction. Less violence, more legitimate business. He has enemies because of it. People who would hurt me to get to him. Yes, but they'd have to go through him first, and trust me when I say that's not an easy thing to do. Rosa pulled down plates. He's the most dangerous man in Philadelphia when someone threatens what's his. I'm not his. Rosa just smiled and said nothing, which somehow felt louder than any argument. Marco didn't come back that night. Or the next day. Rosa stayed, sleeping in one of the guest rooms, and Olivia tried not to climb the walls. She had no clothes except what she'd been wearing, no books, nothing to do except stare at the city and worry. Rosa lent her sleepwear and promised to take her shopping once Marco gave the all-clear. On the third night, Olivia was sitting by the windows in one of Marco's shirts. It hit her mid-thigh and smelled like him, like cologne and danger and something uniquely masculine, when she heard the elevator. Her heart leaped, and she turned to see Marco stepping out, his shirt untucked, his tie loosened, dark circles under his eyes. There was blood on his collar. "Oh my God!" She rushed to him, her hands hovering over the stain. "Are you hurt? What happened?" "Not my blood." He caught her hands, his grip gentle despite the tension radiating from his body. "We had a situation. It's handled." "Handled how?" "In a way you don't need to know about." He studied her face, and something in his expression softened. "Is that my shirt?" She flushed, suddenly aware of how little she was wearing. "Rosa said I could borrow. I didn't have anything else." "Keep it." His voice was rough. "You look better in it than I do." The electricity was back, crackling between them. Marco's hands were still holding hers, his thumbs stroking over her knuckles. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried, and something in her chest ached. "When was the last time you slept?" she asked softly. 72 hours, give or take." He released her hands, moving to pour himself another whiskey. "I'll sleep when you're safe." "Marco, you can't." "I can. I will." He downed the drink. "The threat is mostly contained. We found the people who were talking about making a move on you. They've been discouraged." She didn't ask what that meant. "So I can go home?" "Not yet. There are still loose ends." He set down his glass, then looked at her with an intensity that stole her breath. "And honestly, I'm not ready to let you leave." "Why?" "Because in 3 days you've become the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I sleep. Because when I'm dealing with the ugliest parts of my business, I think about you in my shirt, safe in my home, and it makes the darkness bearable. Because," he stopped, his jaw clenching, "because I'm being selfish. And I know it, but I don't care." Olivia's heart was hammering against her ribs. She should be afraid. She should want to run. Instead, she found herself moving closer, closing the distance between them. "I can't stop thinking about you either," she whispered. "Even though you're dangerous, even though this whole world terrifies me, I keep wondering what would happen if—" He kissed her. One moment there was space between them, and the next, his mouth was on hers, hungry and demanding, and somehow gentle at the same time. His hands cupped her face, tilting her head back, and she melted into him, her fingers gripping his shirt. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marco pressed his forehead to hers. "This is a terrible idea." "The worst," she agreed. "You should run, far and fast." "I should." She kissed him again, softer this time. "But I won't." "Olivia," his voice was strained, "I can't promise you a normal life. I can't promise you safety. Not really. The world I live in, it's dark and dangerous and I'm already part of it, remember? The moment I hummed that lullaby, the moment your father claimed me as family." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "Maybe my grandmother ran from this life, but I'm not her. I don't want to spend my life hiding, wondering what if. I want—" "What? What do you want?" "You." The word came out barely a whisper. "I want you, Marco. Even though it's crazy, even though we barely know each other, I want to know what this could be." He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands sliding into her hair. When he lifted her, she wrapped her legs around his waist automatically, and he carried her to the couch, laying her down carefully, covering her body with his. "I can't be gentle," he murmured against her throat. "Not with how much I want you." "I don't want gentle. I want real." They lost themselves in each other then, in kisses that tasted like whiskey and need, in touches that burned. Marco worshipped her with his hands and mouth, and when he finally pulled back, breathing hard, his eyes were dark with desire and something deeper. "Not like this," he said roughly. "Not when I'm exhausted and you're vulnerable. When I have you, and I will have you, Olivia, make no mistake about that. It will be when we both have clear heads. When you're certain. I'm certain now. You will be even more certain later." He stood, adjusting his clothes, then held out his hand. "Come on, let's get some sleep." He led her to the master bedroom, a space she hadn't entered before. The bed was enormous, the sheets clearly expensive. Marco stripped off his shirt, revealing the full extent of his tattoos. Roses and thorns covered his chest and shoulders, intertwined with Italian script she couldn't quite read. Scars marked his skin too, evidence of a violent life. "You can take the bed," he said. "I'll take the couch." "Don't be ridiculous. It's your bed." "Olivia, just sleep, Marco. We're both adults. We can share a bed without—" She climbed under the covers, her cheeks flushing. "Just sleep." He hesitated, then nodded. He stripped down to his boxers, and she tried not to stare at his body, all lean muscle and dangerous grace. When he slid into bed beside her, the mattress dipping under his weight, she rolled toward him instinctively. Marco pulled her close, her back to his chest, his arm around her waist. "This is still a terrible idea," he murmured into her hair. "Most of the best things are." She laced her fingers through his. "Marco? Sing me the lullaby. The whole thing." He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought he might refuse. Then, soft and low, he began to sing in Italian. His voice was rough, untrained, but the melody was hauntingly beautiful. It was her grandmother's lullaby, but with words she'd never heard, words that spoke of love and loss and finding your way home. Olivia felt tears sliding down her cheeks. What do the words mean? "It's a promise," Marco whispered. "A promise that no matter how far you wander, no matter how lost you become, there will always be someone singing you home, someone who loves you enough to be your light in the darkness." She turned in his arms, pressing her face to his chest. "My grandmother used to hum it when I had nightmares. My mother sang it to me when I was scared of the dark." His arms tightened around her. Maybe that's what it's meant to do. Connect us across generations, across choices and distance. Remind us that we're never truly alone. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and for the first time in 3 days, Marco slept deeply and without nightmares. When Olivia woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and she was alone. Panic spiked through her until she heard movement in the kitchen. She found Marco there, shirtless and cooking eggs, talking on the phone in rapid Italian. When he saw her, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. He ended the call, then pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "Good morning." "You're cooking. Don't sound so surprised. I'm Italian. We're born knowing how to make eggs." He plated food for both of them. "I have good news. The situation is handled. You can go home if you want." Her chest tightened. "Oh. Or..." He set down his fork, meeting her eyes. "Or you could stay. Not because you have to, not because you're in danger, but because you want to. Marco, we barely know each other. I know you hum when you're nervous. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you're brave enough to walk into a dying man's house and give him peace. I know you feel like home in a way nothing else ever has." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm just asking you to give us a real chance. Let me take you to dinner. Let me show you that my world isn't just darkness. Let me prove that I can make you happy." She thought about her tiny apartment, her exhausting jobs, the loneliness that had become her constant companion. Then she thought about Marco's arms around her, his voice singing her to sleep, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. "One condition," she said. "Name it." "I want to keep working. Not at the restaurant. I know that's not safe anymore, but I need purpose. I need to do something meaningful. Done. I own a bakery. Legitimate, clean business. The owner has been wanting to retire. What if I bought it and put you in charge? You could run it however you want, make it yours. You're serious. I'm always serious when it comes to you. He stood, moving around the table to cup her face in his hands. Say yes, Olivia. Say you'll stay. Say you'll let me prove that I'm worth the risk. She kissed him, pouring everything she felt, the fear and hope and crazy, impossible attraction, into it. When she pulled back, she whispered against his lips. Yes. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Marco had been telling the truth. He did own a bakery, a beautiful space in a good neighborhood. The owner, an older woman named Gianna, was thrilled to retire, and equally thrilled to teach Olivia everything she knew before leaving. Olivia threw herself into the work, arriving before dawn to start the bread, staying late to perfect new recipes. Marco would visit at odd hours, sometimes in a suit from a meeting, sometimes in jeans and a t-shirt, always making her heart race when he walked through the door. He courted her the old-fashioned way, dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through the city, drives out to the countryside. He introduced her slowly to his world, always careful to shield her from the worst of it. She met his lieutenants, men with hard eyes who softened when they talked to her. She attended family dinners at Leo's house, watching the old man grow frailer but happier, surrounded by the family he'd thought he lost. And at night, in Marco's penthouse, which had gradually become their penthouse, he would hold her and sing the lullaby, and she would feel more at home than she ever had in her life. It wasn't perfect. There were nights he came home with blood on his clothes that he wouldn't explain. There were phone calls that made him tense, meetings he couldn't tell her about. She knew there were parts of his life that were dark and dangerous, parts he kept separate to protect her. But there were also mornings where he would wake her with kisses and coffee, afternoons where he'd show up at the bakery with flowers for no reason, evenings where they'd cook together, laughing and dancing in the kitchen. He was teaching her Italian, and she was teaching him her grandmother's recipes. They were building something real, something that felt permanent. On a Tuesday in October, 3.5 months after they met, Olivia was closing up the bakery when Marco arrived, dressed in his best suit. His face was somber and her heart clenched. What's wrong? Get your coat. We need to go somewhere. He drove her to Leo's house in silence, and when they walked in, she saw Rosa crying. Her blood went cold. No, not yet. The doctor said he had more time. He's not gone yet. Marco's voice was tight, but it's close. He's asking for you. They rushed to the bedroom where Leo lay in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines. His eyes were closed, his breathing labored. But when Olivia took his hand, they fluttered open. Bambina, he whispered, you came. Of course I came. She blinked back tears. I'm here. Marco. Leo's gaze shifted to his son. You'll take care of her. Promise me. I promise, Papa. And you. Back to Olivia. You'll take care of him. He needs someone to remind him he's human, not just a weapon for the family. I will. I promise. Leo smiled, then began to sing, so quietly she had to lean in to hear. It was the lullaby, the words barely more than breath. Marco joined in, his voice cracking, and then Olivia added her voice too, humming the melody her grandmother had taught her. Leo's eyes closed, his hand relaxed in hers, and with the three of them singing, he slipped away, carried home by the same lullaby that had connected them all across the years. The funeral was enormous. It felt like half the city came to pay respects. Olivia stood beside Marco, his hand gripping hers so tightly her fingers went numb. She saw the weight of the family settling fully onto his shoulders now, the way the other men looked to him for direction. He was no longer the heir. He was the patriarch. That night, back at the penthouse, Marco was silent. He stood at the window, staring out at the city, tension radiating from every line of his body. Olivia came up behind him, wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her cheek to his back. I keep thinking about what he said, Marco finally spoke. About Maria. about how he let her go because he loved her, about how family means knowing when to set someone free. Olivia's heart stuttered. Marco. He turned in her arms, his eyes intense. I should let you go. This life, it's only going to get darker now that I'm fully in charge. There will be more danger, more violence, more nights where I come home with blood on my hands. You deserve better. You deserve safety, and peace, and you. She cut him off, cupping his face. I deserve you. I choose you, Marco. Every day I choose you and this life and us. Olivia, you don't understand what you're signing up for. Then tell me. Tell me all of it. The worst parts. The darkest parts. Stop trying to protect me and just be honest. So he told her. About the territory wars and the violence. About the corruption and the moral compromises. About the enemies who would always be looking for weaknesses, for ways to hurt him. About the blood on his hands and the weight of the choices he had to make. He laid it all out, his voice flat and factual, and when he was done, she saw the fear in his eyes. Fear that she would finally run, that she would realize what a mistake she'd made. Instead, she pulled him close, holding him as tightly as she could. I'm not going anywhere. Why? His voice broke. Why would you stay? Why would you choose this? Because beneath all the darkness, you're good. Because you're trying to change things, to make the family better. Because you sing lullabies, and buy bakeries, and look at your dying father with so much love, it breaks my heart. Because you're mine, and I'm yours, and that matters more than anything else. Marco pulled back, his eyes searching hers. Then he dropped to one knee, and Olivia's breath caught. I don't have a ring yet, he said, his voice rough. I was going to wait, plan something perfect, but I can't. I can't spend another day without you knowing exactly how permanent you are to me. He took her hand, pressing it to his heart. Olivia Castellano, granddaughter of Maria Vittori, keeper of my heart, will you marry me? Will you be my wife, my partner, my light in all the darkness? Will you stand beside me and help me build something better, something worthy of the woman who ran away to find freedom? Tears were streaming down her face. Yes. God, yes. 1,000 times. Yes. He stood, lifting her off her feet and spinning her, and when he kissed her, it felt like a promise, like a beginning. They were married 3 weeks later in a small ceremony at the same church where Leo had been eulogized. Rosa cried through the entire thing. Marco's men stood as groomsmen, looking uncomfortable in their suits. And when the priest pronounced them husband and wife, when Marco kissed her, Olivia felt her grandmother's presence like a blessing. At the reception, Rosa pulled her aside, pressing something into her hands. An old photograph. It showed a young woman, 17 maybe, with dark hair and fierce eyes, standing beside a teenage boy. Maria and Leo, Rosa explained, the day before she ran. Leo gave this to me years ago, said if his sister ever came back, if any part of her ever came home, I should pass it along. Her eyes were kind. You're the part of her that came home, Olivia. You're the proof that her choice was right, that love and freedom matter more than obligation. She'd be so proud of you. Olivia clutched the photograph, studying her grandmother's young face. She could see the determination there, the same fire that had let her walk away from everything she knew to build a better life. And she understood, finally, that she wasn't running from her grandmother's legacy. She was honoring it. Maria had run toward love, toward freedom, toward choice. And now Olivia was doing the same, just in a different way. She found Marco talking with some associates, and when he saw her, his entire face transformed. He excused himself, coming to her side, his arm sliding around her waist with casual possessiveness that still made her heart flutter. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She showed him the photograph. Rosa gave me this. It's my grandmother and your father. Marco studied it, his expression softening. He was so young. He loved her enough to let her go. Olivia looked up at her husband. Her husband, it still felt surreal. Thank you for not letting me go. Thank you for fighting for us. Always, he kissed her forehead. You're mine now, Olivia Vittori, and I take care of what's mine. I'm still keeping Castellano, she teased. Professionally, at least. The bakery is under that name. I don't care what name you use, as long as you come home to me every night. They danced their first dance to an instrumental version of the lullaby, and there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Olivia rested her head on Marco's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his hands strong and steady on her back. What are you thinking? He murmured. That my grandmother hummed this song to help me sleep. That your mother sang it to chase away your fears. That your father used it to say goodbye. She looked up at him. And that someday we'll sing it to our children. And it will mean home and safety and love. We'll turn something that was lost into something found. Marco's eyes were suspiciously bright. How did I get so lucky? You froze when you heard a lullaby. You asked the right questions. You were brave enough to claim me as family even when I was a stranger. She smiled. We found each other, Marco. Across generations, across all the choices and chances that could have kept us apart. We found each other. And I'm never letting you go. He kissed her then, in front of everyone, and the room erupted in applause. But Olivia barely heard it. She was too busy thinking about her grandmother, about the teenage girl who'd run away to find freedom, never knowing that her granddaughter would one day walk back into that world by choice, never knowing that the lullaby she'd hummed in the darkness would be the thread that brought two lonely people together. Later that night, in the penthouse that was now their home, Marco carried her over the threshold with mock solemnity that made her laugh. He set her down gently, then just held her, his face buried in her hair. I don't say it enough, he whispered. I love you, Olivia, more than I thought I could love anything. You walked into my life humming a song, and you turned everything upside down in the best way. I love you too. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. And I'm not scared anymore. Not of your world, not of the future. As long as we're together, I can face anything. Together, he agreed. Always together. He sang her the lullaby that night, the full version with all the words, his voice low and soothing in the darkness. And as Olivia drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about the power of songs and stories, about the ways they connect us across time and distance. She thought about her grandmother's courage and Leo's love and the impossible chain of events that had led her here. She'd walked into work one morning as a lonely line cook with no family. She'd hummed an old lullaby without thinking twice about it. And she'd walked out as part of something bigger. A legacy of love and choice and fierce determination to build something better than what came before. The Mafia boss had frozen when he heard his mother's song. And in that moment of recognition, in that instant of connection, everything had changed. They'd found each other. They'd found home. And it all started with a lullaby.